Hey guys, Rob Reviews here, bringing you another awesome review for another episode of The Walking Dead. This one, we're still on Season 1, Episode 5, called Wildfire. This is the second to last episode of Season 1, so we're getting there to the end of the season. This one originally aired on November the 28th, 2010, and this was directed by Ernest Dickerson. So we'll just go through the plot real briefly. I'll kind of whiz through the plot with you guys, and then we'll kind of have a little summary, and I'll talk about my overall thoughts. So we obviously have the morning after the massacre of the camp, where we obviously have Amy and Ed and all that dead. Basically, we have a little scene where Rick's talking to Morgan, or at least he's trying to talk to Morgan on the walkie-talkie, but it doesn't appear that Morgan is responding, but he's talking to him anyway, trying to tell Morgan that he has to go off after he found his wife and son. And then we obviously see the campsite, Andrea cradling Amy's body. Laurie basically tries to comfort her and stuff, and we have Daryl swinging an axe at Walker's head and all that. Rick and Laurie and Shane discuss how to handle Andrea. They talk about dragging her away and stuff like that, but they decide to leave her. We have Morales and Daryl digging, basically dragging the bodies of the dead towards the fire, but Glenn stops them, saying we bury our friends, we burn the walkers. Jackie and Jim basically are piling some bodies, and she notices that there's bleeding on his shirt, and basically she reveals to the group that he's been bitten, and they lift his shirt up, and they basically see a bite on his belly, I guess, and he Jim says it's okay, Bo. Basically, eventually, they discuss what to do with Jim. They say Daryl basically wants to put a pickaxe in the guy's head, and he goes for it. But then Rick suggests that they go to the CDC because they might obviously have a cure for Jim. But Shane wants to go to Fort Benning, but that's 100 miles, so they decide, to go there anyway. So basically, we have Dale sitting beside Andrea, and then we have Rick going over to Andrea, and then Rick obviously puts a gun to him and says, I know how the safety works. We see Carol to put down her husband, obviously while she's crying. And then we have Andrea with Amy. Amy starts to turn. She comes back as a zombie. Andrea says, I love you, and then shoots her sister. Really good acting there. We have Rick and Shane, digging, talking. We have Jim hallucinating inside the RV and all that. We have Rick talking to Laurie. They eventually obviously have Jim with his fever, coughing up blood. Not looking good. And then we have the guys, basically, they decide to eventually, they go off to the CDC. Morales actually leaves with his family. They actually decide that they want to actually try and find their family in Birmingham, Ohio. So Rick hands Morales a gun, and they go off. So on the way to CDC, the RV's radiator hose bursts, of course, while Shane and T-Dog drive ahead to find parts. Jim says that he wants to be left by the road, which they do, and then they go off. They eventually get to the CDC, and before they get to the CDC, we see Dr. Jenner speaking on the radio. We're talking on a thing in a biohazard suit with classical music playing. He passes through the airlock in the laboratory, and obviously the tissue is contaminated, so the voiceover actually destroys it, and Jenna kind of like screams, but then it goes up in flames. Then we have Jenna obviously speaking kind of quite drunkily to the camera, how it's basically failed. And then Rick's caravan approaches the CDC. They all come out. They notice the building's locked, so everyone's like, we may as well go. They're panicking. Shane suggests that they should just turn around and go to Fort Benning. Andrea points out that they're out of gas and they have no food. And then Rick catches a quick sight of the security camera, so he knows that someone's in there. Shane's telling them to go. They're all kind of panicking, and Rick screams, you're killing us. And then suddenly the shutters just open, and it's the light just comes off into the survivors, and so we know that Jenna basically let them in. So that was the end of episode 5. Really, really cool. Now, when you have an episode like Vatos, for example, where there's an ending and a lot of character dies, it's kind of expected to have an episode that's slower. I think that's kind of one of the downsides to having an episode like that, is the episode next has to be slower, unless it's like that was as long as if Vatos was the finale, they would have been a bit different. But because it wasn't, this one kind of had to be a bit slower. You had to have the morning at the start of the episode. But I think the acting was so good in the morning. The stuff with Daryl, obviously Daryl being a bit of a prick at this part in the story. The stuff with Jim was quite emotional. Obviously, we saw the death of Jim, finally him getting left on the road. So we presume he just turned. So many nice things in this episode. Nice acting. I like the stuff with Morales, and he's gone now. Splitting off, so we've got like our kind of main group now. This is our core group from now on, which is pretty cool. Overall, just a pretty solid second to last episode. Really fun, pretty intense, and I guess it leaves you on the edge of your seat, especially the last part. I think the bit with Jenna though was a bit really weird. I think they maybe could have done it as the opening sequence had the stuff with Jenna instead. I think that maybe would have been a bit of a better structure to have the opening sequence with Jenna and then have the stuff with Rick on the radio and everything. Instead of that being the opening scene, have Jenna. I don't know. I just think that would have been better, and then we could like eventually learn who Jenna is through the story. But I think it was done okay. So it leaves us kind of wondering what's going to come next, I guess. But overall, what would I give this episode? I'm going to have to give it a 7. I think a 7's fair enough, because I don't think it was amazing, but I give it the benefit of the doubt because, of course, it is an episode after a tragedy. So, and because we did have another death, we had Jim's death. It was more of a sad death than a really, really exciting, impactful death. And Jim's not really been there. He's been there for a bit, and we obviously had the thing with him digging. But to be honest with you, like, he didn't really have a family member like Andrea did, so with Amy. So it was a bit different. But whatever. But anyway, thanks for watching, guys. I hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you next video. Tell me your thoughts on this episode, and yeah, goodbye.